Hi, my name is Mark and welcome to The Active Listener, where we aim to listen, not just hear. We firmly believe that everyone has an interesting story to tell, if given the space to do so. So listen in to what our guests have to say. You may learn something. Today we've got a really interesting guest in an area which I think is quite unusual, really, generally for a man. But thankfully, in these modern times, things are changing. So welcome, Rob.
Hi, Mark. Thank you very much for having me on your podcast today.
It's great to have you along. So, Rob, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
My name's Rob Fox. I'm a former teacher. I am an early years nanny based here in the city of Cambridge.
I understand you call yourself a manny rather than a nanny.
It's an interesting one, Mark. I never like my role to be defined by gender as such. It's become more popular of recent that males have been referring to themselves as manny. But to be honest with you, it doesn't really make any difference. We both are there to support the care and well-being of young children within home environments as such.
You mentioned you were a teacher before, so I can see there's obviously that connection with young people. But what led you into teaching, and then how did you end up becoming a nanny?
I first became sort of acquainted with working in the sector back in the summer of 2008. I'd left school. I wasn't really a predominant academic at the time, and I have a sister who's 8.5 years younger than me. And my mum said, "Why don't you volunteer in the local village school?" Basically to support sort of listening to children read, doing sports activities. We were at separate schools. I had long summer holidays, so I thought, why not? Why not give this a try? From there, my energy was sparked. Really, it was the engagement of the children. I was coming home each day with a smile on my face, and I thought, okay, this is something to consider. That September, I went to Cambridge Regional College, based over on the King's Hedges site, and I started with a cash level 2 program in childcare and education. This really, for me, was the foundation of my knowledge, teaching me about the seriousness of play, what is play, how to set up structured experiences for children, but also learn about child development and giving them the opportunity to thrive. So that year, the level 2 year, 2008, it was sparked, and I did that, which inspired me to go on to a 2-year program. During that time, I did placements with multiple families, school settings, childminders, etc. And from there, it was sparked. And I went, after finishing my level 3, I went to work in schools and worked in nurseries. Fast forward many years later, I was working at various nurseries and schools, and then decided, why not have a bit of a change of scene? So I went off to teach English in Italy. And at the time, I was 22. I'd never moved away from home before. It was kind of an eye-opener for me, moving outside the bubble as such. So I did 6 months teaching in an international school based in Brescia in northern Italy. And after that, I thought to myself, I need to come back. To be recognised in this industry or well-respected, I needed to gain a step up of my knowledge and theory and perspective, and bring that down to the practical levels on the ground with working with children. So I decided, crazily enough, to get a job and work and do my degree at the same time. Looking back now, I think, why did I do that? But it was a good opportunity to make some money, gain the practical experience, and also enjoy what I do. So I worked in a prep school in just off the King's Road whilst I was studying at Kingston, supporting a reception class / nursery provision. So I finished my degree in, I can't remember the years all roll into one, and especially COVID as well. I came back to work at Stephen Peirce School in the city, and it was from there I was inspired to go on and do my BA in early childhood development, and they were very supportive in the sharing of knowledge and practical experiences that I had. And obviously the pandemic came about. Kind of my thinking and research had really changed to more of kind of how can we support children's needs? How can we, the world's changing around us, what can I do to support children, but as well as their parents, in supporting their well-being and mental health? Now, so at home one day, I got a message from a friend, and he said to me, "Have you considered a career as a nanny?" And I said, "Not really, but thank you for the suggestion." He said, "No, I think you'll be really good at it." So this got me thinking about the need of looking at various childcare provision in the city and looking at if there was how people were doing it. And just from an observation, I'd observed that there was no ad hoc childcare. There was the traditional nanny sense of practice. So the alarm bells were ringing, and basically I decided that I was going to be an ad hoc nanny.
Ad hoc nanny, what do you mean you're dipping in and out of it? Was that an actual official term sort of thing?
So yeah, it got me thinking about the 0-hour contract kind of thing in my head, and about that need for flexibility might be needed when we re-immerse from this new world. That we didn't know what was going to happen. A couple of days later, I received a phone call from a family who I'd worked with very closely in the city, and they had just been let down by their nanny. So I took the opportunity. I worked for a family of cardiologists supporting childcare for a 6-month-old and a 3.5-year-old during the midst of the lockdown from September 2020 to May 2021. The needs changed. So I was working for cardiologists, and obviously with the pandemic, hours increased. During that time, it was eye-opening really to kind of observe when other nannies were in the industry, the lack of professional image that people often referred to me as a babysitter, or are you the same as a childminder? But you're not a teacher because you work in the home. And sort of professional questions were thrown at me. It got me thinking about the seriousness of the profession as a whole. What is the balance of education? What is Educarer? How can we bring about professional image of our sector as one that we are raising the next generation? We are a sector that is predominantly underfunded. Nursery nurses don't make as much money, or nannies don't make as much money as doctors or nurses. And I remember having a conversation with a doctor friend of mine one day, and he said to me, you're just a nanny." And it kind of rattled my bones a little bit. As a sector, we are so under-respected within our society. So putting that aside, I now work supporting childcare for around 15 families in the city. I am a self-employed nanny. I have my own childcare business. I help train educators on a global level, and hoping to raise the bar of the sector from a gender perspective, but also something that I haven't shared in our chat today. I'm neurodiverse. I was written off when I was at school. I was told I was told on my last day, you make nothing but matchboxes. And, it's that kind of thing I recognize with children, how we are very quick to label children with additional needs, or even us as adults with additional needs. We're very easy to judge. And I guess some positives that have come out of the pandemic, everyone is talking a little bit more about anxiety. Anxiety has become kind of the norm to be spoken about, but also children's needs. Children's needs are ever changing, and through the variety of experiences that I have had, I'm able to support and nurture through a first-hand experience, but also a tailored approach to supporting inclusion within the home, which also involves supporting the mental health and well-being of those adults that look after our children as well.
In one sense, you're focusing on the quality that you're delivering and looking after those children, but also the industry as well, the way it's perceived. And then you've got the whole element of well-being and how that feeds into that. What do you see as catalyst to bring about change? Are you part of that? What are you envisaging as a way forward in the sector?
Encouraging people to be the best versions of themselves and allowing people to share their stories so openly. During the pandemic, I was fortunate enough I run a social media platform called Active Childhood UK over on Facebook. And there I was able to collaborate with around 70 plus professionals within the industry. And actually just sharing our voice, whether you be in our sector or not, or whether we all need to come together. And actually, during that time, I had musicians come on and talk. I had people telling stories from different parts of the world, and actually realizing how united we have become out of something that's been going on for far too long. And also knowing your worth as an educator, knowing your worth, knowing your value, knowing that your voice matters, and that you're not just not just an admin assistant, you're not just a cook, you're not just a cleaner. You have a skill set. And actually it got me thinking about recognizing our own individual learning styles. And if we as a whole, if we recognized how each other worked, if we understood in a recruitment perspective, if we understood how each other works, how each other are our own levels of multiple intelligence, how we connect. Howard Gardner, a very famous academic, speaks about that, and actually about how we learn through being a kinesthetic learner. We all have different ways to learn. We'd be an auditory learner or a visual, and really kind of nurturing that and understanding that, so we're supporting each other more holistically whilst on the ground, whatever sector we may be in.
I think you're absolutely right, particularly when it comes down to the judgments we make of people based upon what they do as a profession. I think there's something really powerful that you're sharing there about the kinesthetic learning, and you've mentioned something about the levels of intelligence or levels of education, in the sense of we each have them. Can you just unpack that a bit?
Absolutely. So we all hold our own levels of intelligence, whether that be how we learn, how we do things on a daily basis. From an early years perspective, I always come back to the 100 Languages of Children, which was written in Reggio Emilia, and it was a poem written post-wartime about how children learn, and that sits alongside with how us as adults learn. Without the secure basis, without that enabled environment, without children can't reach their full potential. And actually recognizing that we all have a unique way to learn. I'm neurodiverse. I was diagnosed whilst at university, but I lived the journey of masking my own disability. I've lived, trying to fit into a society of developmental norms or developmental tick boxes that I see children filtered through this school system that almost needs to be ripped up and torn apart. And actually recognizing the way they learn. There's no such thing as challenging behavior or naughty behavior. You see on TV how the press are constantly on the back of, parents in the way that they must handle their behavior. Or it's down to ourselves. We're all educated folk in our own way, but also recognizing that we all have a different way of doing things. And it's for us to have that cultural understanding also about the way that parents are bringing their children up as educators, and also adapting our practice to on the floor with the children about understanding that there is not a one box there isn't a tick box approach to inclusion or diversity within your environment. But I believe that diversity and inclusion also sit alongside each other, but they need to be broken down into more practical skills in developing how we support those people that we work with holistically.
So in terms of the way that you work with kids, are you talking kind of like a diversity in learning in the way that they learn? And also I'd ask as well, in relation to that, what I note is you're talking from very much a educational perspective. And I guess traditionally speaking, this shows my ignorance, okay, or maybe unconscious bias. But when I think of a nanny, I think of someone looking after the kids, maybe taking them out, the sort of preschool age, which I take my hat off to you. I mean, I used to teach sixth form and like university, anything younger than 16. And wow. So when you're talking that age, you're a different level. I've got respect. So what does that look like? I guess I'm asking.
It's basically going back to childhood development and knowledge and theory. You're not equipped with a book when you're given a child as a parent, or even as a young educator. I kind of reflect back to the time. And like I touched on earlier on about the imbalance between education and care, and really kind of nurturing the process, nurture or nature, and recognizing actually there is a deeper meaning behind every single interaction that you are doing with the child, even from care routines to slowing down the process of emotional coaching from an early age, even in the way you speak to the children, positive reinforcements. I believe in positive praise as well. Actually, this is a good example here of praising purposefully. So, for example, I'm not one of those people to condition children with stickers or rewards. It's more of a good job. I really like the way you have painted that picture. I like the way that you have used these colours to bring out the other colours in the image, because it's more purposeful. It's more meaningful. There's more meaning in what we're doing within the sector. There is now, for me, I see learning in the hidden opportunities. So taking a child to a shop, there is mathematics, there is personal, social and emotional development, there is communication and language, talking to the shopkeeper, asking for various things. I'm regularly seen in the botanical gardens in the cafe getting children to use money and pay for their ice cream, or if we're at the museum of the Fitzwilliam, draw with my older children, getting them to draw what they see, and actually saying to them, you can draw what your own interpretation of what you see is, rather than being told, this is what you have to draw and this is what the end outcome needs to be. I guess my point here is nurturing the process of learning and not giving the child an end product. This can be seen in schools. I'm going to be controversial here. There is schools within the city that you see worksheets being used and things, but just a thought, their original thought needs to be processed. And if we're within our sector and within other sectors, if we're seen to be doing something that's product driven, then creativity is being killed. And I think Ken Robinson made a good point about the lack of creativity that is being killed within the classroom. And most certainly there are, with the pressure that has been going on in the classroom, it's time to take a informed trauma approach and kind of recognize children for who they are, where they're at, and actually nurture those individual skills, for they hold so much greater knowledge than what we as professionals have to give. Their original thoughts, their philosophy for children. I take this back to a friend of mine, a preschool teacher in Sweden, Suzanne Axelsson, once said to me, she said, nurture the image of play is what the child defines it to be. And actually give play back to the child. I give them the freedom of expression and to really let the process unveil, and it will happen at their own pace and at their own time.
You sound very encouraging, and there also is that real clear sense of empowerment of the kids that you're working with, and you bring definitely a very strong educational dynamic to that whole process of interacting with the kids. I really like what you're saying, and indeed, so Ken Robinson, major fan. He's passed, but liked his approach on things. What would typical day in the life of you look like in terms of your job, Rob?
It really varies. It varies from day to day. Every day is a school day, to be cliche. I go with the flow. I allow the children to dictate what they can do. I can be there as a facilitator to their learning as they grow, taking them out into nature, running around in fields, collecting different shapes of leaves, kind of getting them outside, getting them jumping in the playground. And there was one occasion where we were out on a walk and we discovered a wheelbarrow in the forest. And the child was mad about tractors at the time. And without any prompts, he gathered some wood from around. There were some wood pallets and things that had just been dumped. And he arranged it into a tractor. And I sort of risk assessed it in my head of, can this child was three and a bit at the time, can he manage these tools for himself? And actually I let him manage that risk and take that opportunity. And often with risk and challenge, sometimes we don't allow children enough time and space to actually process, and we want to do things for them. So in this moment, I actually stepped back. I thought, okay, minimal risk here, and allowed the child the experience. He then went on to, gather the resources and make his own thing. And at first it was a tractor, then it turned into a bus, and then it turned into an airplane. And I just allowed him to develop the story for himself.
Fantastic. So it sounds to me that you don't actually have, and again, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like to me you don't have an agenda in the sense of, right, we're going to do this, I'm going to deliver that, I'm going to teach that. It's more a core set of values in the way that you respond and encourage the child. Is that right?
Absolutely. it's a balance of the core principles of giving children the time and space to develop their own concepts that enable them to do their own, almost the freedom to learn at their own pace.
So how does that go down, so to speak, with parents? Are the parents that you work with looking for a specific kind of nanny? I'm just wondering how what you do compares to other people in the industry, and is it that you're specifically sought out because you have a different approach, or how does that all work, Rob?
I think it's being honest and open with what is your individual skill set. So I for one, I tell people I'm not the traditional nanny type. This is what skill set I have. This is what I can offer your children. In terms of cooking, I'm not the best chef. I can prepare basic meals, but I can offer you X, Y, and Z. I can offer your children experiences that are varied and, a variety. And actually pick it. I know this can sound, but being selective of who you're working with from an energy perspective and also from connections. I believe in working with people who understand your vibe and actually want to be there to support and learn together as well as kind of not being treated as a member of staff, but being treated as a member of the family whilst looking after their children's needs as well.
Yeah, so it sounds it's very much about relationship, isn't it? And I guess what I said earlier about working with them perhaps rather than working for. So how do you go about promoting yourself and getting clients, and if clients is the right word?
I have my social media over at Active Childhood on Instagram. I've had lots of inquiries based on that. There is childcare.co.uk. If I'm looking for ad hoc families, would be something that I would look at, but also just word of mouth, really. Get recommendations, and actually 9 times out of 10, it's actually word of mouth that gets me introduced to someone who knows someone who knows someone. Like we were saying before, Cambridge is such a village almost in a small village vibe of, everybody seems to know somebody who knows somebody who's connected in that way.
Again, relationship, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's really insightful. Thank you, Rob. And before we wrap up with the usual questions, I understand that you have been nominated for an award.
Thank you very much, Mark. I didn't really want to touch on it, but yeah, thank you very much for acknowledging it. I've recently been nominated for UK Nanny of the Year, and the final is on June the 11th. I've been shortlisted to the final 4, but I am the only UK nanny outside of London to be nominated. All the rest of the nannies are based in London. So, I'm eternally grateful to the person who nominated me. I'm not aware of who it was. Very surprised about this, but really glad to be receiving some recognition within this industry as well.
Well, that's really exciting, and I look forward to hearing what happens next regarding that. Now, I know you're a busy guy, so we'll rattle reasonably quick through these things, but I can't let you get away with not doing them. Could you tell me something you're most proud of?
Hard question, Mark. So many things. I'll take it back to practice, I guess. Working with new families, I guess, building those relationships, and the first smile of a child who has struggled to settle once a parent's gone back to work. I guess that is the biggest achievement for me, that I've met them where they're at, and they're able to understand that I'm there to be their educarer and recognise that actually that's just the most powerful moment. and proudest achievement as such of recent.
I like the term Educarer as well. That's good. Favourite song or piece of music?
I was probably saying Never Too Much by Luther Vandross. And my father was a 70s soul DJ, so I was brought up with a lot of soul in the house.
Oh, wow.
And Never Too Much was one of those songs that I kind of was on repeat growing up.
It's a classic, absolutely.
It's an absolute classic as well.
Absolute classic, yeah. Food.
I'm a pasta fiend. I love pasta. I touched on living in Italy. Pasta is my favourite. Pasta is my favourite. Any pasta.
Any pasta. And is there
I love pasta.
Any particular sauce or dish or version of pasta, or it's just pasta?
Pasta with pesto, pine nuts, pancetta, mozzarella, to be precise, with a little bit of spinach.
Wow, that sounds good.
Very good. It's making my belly rumble now. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that sounds very good. Place?
Probably Dublin. I had my 21st birthday there, and I have lots of family there as well. So it's a very special place for me.
Southern Ireland, good place to be. Book, film, or video game?
It's a really hard one. I'm into a lot of Audible books. I listen to quite a bit of Audible books. I love Matt Haig. I think anything by Matt Haig and supporting well-being is very good. I've just recently finished Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty. Anything to do with mental health and well-being, it kind of keeps my mind active and things as well. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, look, Rob, thank you for your time. And
you're very welcome, Mark. Thank you very much for having me on today. And I very much look forward to future conversations with you.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to the podcast. Until next time, remember, help people feel valued. Listen, don't just hear.